Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Nonprofit AI Podcast Midweek Catch-Up. I'm Carolyn Woodard, your host. I also do the regular Friday podcast on lots of different topics, including AI. But this podcast midweek is mostly to touch on how nonprofits are using AI, news about nonprofit AI use that might have some impact on how you're thinking about it. And I'm going to start with my regular disclaimer that I am not an expert in AI. No one is. So this podcast is really meant to help all of us get smarter together as we explore these tools that are just exploding all around us and influencing everything we do at work and in our missions as a nonprofit sector. Nonprofit leaders are in a unique position. We're always being asked to innovate with tools that often are not built for us or with our values in mind. AI is particularly interesting to a lot of nonprofits because it has a lot of productivity promises. And I think nonprofits are already exploring how AI tools can help us do a lot more using a lot less. Right now, of course, a lot of the AI tools are free or included in the license we already have for Microsoft or Google, if that's what we're using. We can see that eventually, maybe very soon, there will be ads. ChatGPT just announced this week that they're exploring, they're testing ads that, of course, will be tailored to us based on the data and questions, prompts that we're putting in if you're using a public tool like ChatGPT. So with that in mind, I wanted to take this third episode to talk a little bit about the issues if we as a nonprofit sector are thinking about the human side of AI and the communities that we serve and are part of. It's every nonprofit, I think, is going to think a lot about the ethics of AI in general and how we can use these tools as ethically as possible. I mean, it's really no different in a lot of ways than using Microsoft or Google or shopping on Amazon. All of these big technology companies have a lot of ethical problems when nonprofits are dealing with their reason for being and what they're doing to communities and to the communities we care about. A lot of nonprofits are feeling AI pressure or FOMO, since that you have to adopt these tools very quickly. I think, as I always say, as Community IT always says, it's okay to hold back a little bit. It's okay to do your research. At the early startup phases, there's going to be a lot of companies that aren't going to exist in a couple of years. So it's fine to wait for that market to consolidate and to find the tools that let other people test the tools on the bleeding edge. And then when those tools are really working for donor management or your CRM or transcribing notes or being an AI assistant, all of the things that you might want it to do, it's fine to wait until those tools are better and are better suited to what you want to use them for. This episode, this podcast isn't really a technical how-to, and I don't really want it to be a debate on whether AI is good or bad. I'm definitely not going to come down on one or the other side of that divide. I think I want to acknowledge there are a lot of nonprofits that work in areas, subject areas and advocacy areas where AI tools are probably a lot more problematic for them because they are causing harm to communities that they care about and are advocating for and are working with. So that would color your interest in adopting a lot of these new tools. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of those issues. As mission-driven organizations, our technology choices are value choices. So with that in mind, AI can be used for, like someone pointed out to me, if you're an environmental organization, you can be using AI to figure out and get funding for ways to stop data centers from using up all the environmental resources. So it is a very complex web of interactions. And today I just wanted to touch on some of the issues. So the first issue for me, and maybe for many of you, is the concentration of power. And this may give nonprofits pause for thought. And again, should be woven into your conversations about setting your AI policies, the AI tools that you're going to use, beyond the technical aspects of, is this a tool that meets a need that I have? You also want to think about your organization's values. And the backbone of almost all AI tools is controlled by four big companies that control a lot of our technology: Google, Microsoft, Meta, which is Facebook, and Amazon. And so nonprofits often exist to challenge systemic power imbalances. So using tools that are owned by a handful of billionaires who also are controlling the social media, legacy media, can feel at odds with your mission, especially if your theory of change is grassroots empowerment, standing up for the community against that kind of a concentration of power. There's a huge lack of regulation around these companies. We're all being experimented on, basically, without our consent. So the companies, those four big companies, and kind of the second layer as well of AI companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, they're setting the rules for themselves. While also they control a lot of the advertising. I was at a conference where the keynote speaker said, remember, when you think about AI and AI tools, those thoughts that you're having are the product of $1 billion advertising campaign aimed at you, the consumer, to think it's really cool and to be excited about how easy it is to use and it's quote unquote free. So just be keeping that in mind while you're thinking about how you feel about AI, which doesn't mean don't use it, right? I mean, I was reading the story about students at Harvard who were grappling with using AI to complete their assignments, and how if you don't use AI, like, are you just injuring yourself against your colleagues who are using AI and are getting good grades by using it, and you're making yourself do it the hard way. And I think that also, applies a little bit to us who are at our sometimes very small organizations and thinking, I can use this tool that will give me a leg up. It'll let me write 3 grant applications in the time it took me to just write, half of a grant application before. Why wouldn't I use that to be able to work smarter, not harder? And I think that's fine. Like, these are debates that we need to be having, that we are having at a board level, at a staff level, at the leadership level, in your personal life as well. So all of those are things to say, to take it into account. I also heard a friend say that, this was about social media, and just said, if social media were a drug, a new medicine, the FDA would have had to study its impacts before it would be allowed to be. It would have to be used on control groups that people signed up for and signed consent forms for before it would be just released into the wild and anyone could prescribe it. And nothing like that has happened for social media, for AI. And we're finding, as these tools are permeating our society, the negative effects as well as positive effects that they're having. So just be aware of that. And just as an organization, you might want to think about your values and use that to inform your policy as you're developing a policy around AI use. And another example, I may have already mentioned this, that I have a friend who works for a virtual school, and she told me that their policy is that no student information, nothing that has anything to do with any students, may be uploaded to any public AI tool. And that's because the information, even if the student's name is not on it, there are so many other points of data that that student could be identifiable, which is against all of their policies. And she said that in the staff meeting in which this was announced, there was kind of this audible gasp. So people had already been doing it without realizing that that was identifiable personal information, because it's, like it seems like it's anonymous if the student's name isn't on it. So clarifying those policies, talking about those policies. This is something that definitely at a board level, you want your board to be talking about the impact of AI on your organization, your values, and the communities that you interact with. So that's one big issue is power imbalance. Another issue is bias. Inherited biases. So we know that large language models are trained on the internet, basically. And the internet, we know, contains an awful lot of human bias, racism, misogyny, bias against marginalized groups. Just a lot of what's on the internet comes from dominant cultures. And so if you are an organization that is worried about protecting the vulnerable, that and not perpetuating bias and perpetuating harm and perpetuating misogyny, that's another thing to take into account when you are using AI tools. And another reason why, as we are stressing, please, please, please use those AI tools from your enterprise account. Log into Google and then log into Gemini, log into Microsoft, your Microsoft account, and then use Copilot instead of going out to use public ChatGPT. Because although it is still using those large language models that it was trained on, there are also ways that you can ask it to use your data. So if you have good data that is as bias-free as you can make it, then you can be using those AI tools to get answers only from your database. Maybe you've been building up an FAQ files over the past decades, and you can use your AI tool only on those qualified answers. So it gives you better outputs. So that's something else to think about when you're thinking about bias. Also, along the lines of protecting the vulnerable, as we've seen in the past couple of weeks, there have been many, many stories about sexualization of images, sexualization of children. Regulations regarding use of images are pretty much non-existent. There are some states, and of course Europe is trying to work hard to catch up with what the AI tools can do. So if you're working in equity or child advocacy, again, you might want to have a very high-level conversation about the tools that create biased out content, create exploitable images, and that's a risk to you as an organization. And it just may be something ethically that you want to talk about, the tools that you're going to use. Maybe not use Grok. Third thing to think about is environmental and community impact. The AI tools are being sold to us as quote unquote free, but they are not free. It is not weightless technology. There's a huge hidden cost that a lot of localities are trying to catch up with and are trying to regulate right now. Massive physical data centers consume enormous amounts of electricity. They use water for cooling. The places they need to be sited, which are close to where people are using these AI tools, are often not the best places to put them. I read this article about Australia is working on requiring AI data centers to be underground. I think in Europe, I read that Germany is working with both putting them underground and using solar energy to power them. So lots of interesting ideas. I'm sure people in those industries and regulators are using AI to work on those policies. But the centers at the moment are often built in marginalized communities. Some of the residents have very little say in the process. I personally live in Northern Virginia, which is right now the largest data center corridor in the world. And I can tell you that a lot of those data centers are going in areas, for example, around inner state exchanges, so where you get on or off of a big highway. And those communities that live there, often those highways came in the 60s, and that might have been, an African American community that had been relegated to living there and owning land in this kind of marginalized land. And then in the 1960s and 70s, highways came in and really devalued that land even more. And now, in some ways, it's good because the data centers are going in where you're just going to see them from a highway, which is just kind of scrubby land anyway. It's not like a nature preserve or something like that. But a lot of that land is owned by these legacy communities, some of them dating back to the 1860s and 1870s. But then again, on the other side, like the flip side of the flip side, those landowners can sell those acres for millions of dollars an acre of land that previously wasn't that valuable. So it's complicated. As we always say, it's complicated. These complexes, the data complexes, change the character of a community rapidly, utilizing resources that local residents rely on, like electricity. All of our rates are going up in Northern Virginia. I can tell you that right now. They use a lot of water. So just if you're an environmental organization, if you're a social justice organization, if you're a climate concerned organization, even if that's not your main focus, the resource footprint of these high intensity data centers for AI use is something you're going to want to weigh in your policies and, again, in the tools that you use and in how you decide to use them. Like, you might want to use AI for relatively light tasks like drafting communications documents or, summarizing meeting notes, if you do it in a secure and safe way, of course. And you might not want to use it for image generation because that takes the most energy right now. And so, you might feel squeamish about using it to generate images. So just something, again, you want to talk about and be cognizant of as you're talking about AI policies. Thinking about impact of AI tools on marginalized or sensitive groups, you want to think about mental health and people who are using AI tools as experts. Particularly if you work in mental health or healthcare generally, you already know probably that these tools are having this outsized impact on people who are using them as friends, as confidants, to get expert medical advice, to get mental health advice. And there's a deep concern about people using AI as an expert source. AI is designed to validate the user, which can feel good if you're like, oh, thank you for thinking I had a good idea. But it can inadvertently reinforce delusions, negative thought patterns. It's not an expert and it's not mental health care professionals. So it also, of course, hallucinates. It gives the wrong information. It gives biased information. So those are all things that you need to think about. Of course, if your use case is that you want to develop a chat bot that would save your staff time and energy, you're going to be very careful about that chatbot returning answers that are associated with your organization and the accuracy of those answers. And I would say for everything that is public that you are putting out there that AI has helped you put together, make sure the human touch is the last editor. It's not a luxury. Your nonprofit relies on your reputation. So think about that as you're developing policy for what staff can use AI for, that you wouldn't put something that AI wrote up on your website without checking it, fact checking it, and of course, checking it for grammar and that it makes sense. So AI at the moment is not perfect and it returns errors. So make sure that you are thinking about that as you're thinking about your policies. So in closing, I would say these are big issues that your nonprofit is going to want to grapple with. Maybe you don't want to grapple with it, but it may make sense for you to grapple with it as AI tools, as this conversation unfolds. Those big categories, buckets of power imbalances, bias and exploitation, the environment and communities that are impacted by the data centers that support AI, and mental health and healthcare issues and concerns. These aren't technology problems, they're community problems. And the nonprofit sector is geared toward community. So as you build your AI policy, of course, you want to start with what needs do we have that AI tools could address? So do we have repetitive tasks? Do we have tasks that could be automated? Do we have tasks that our human staff are doing that they don't enjoy doing and that AI might be able to do better and faster so that the humans can have time in their daily life at work to do more human-oriented things that they enjoy, that are like getting out in the community. As I said, if you can write 3 grant proposals quicker than you could do 1 in the past, that frees up those extra couple of hours of time, or maybe a day or more of time, writing those grant proposals that you could be, doing other things that it really takes a human touch to do at your organization. So I don't want to give anyone the impression that these issues make AI a no-go, like just not negotiable. It's not valuable. It's very valuable for the work that we're doing. But as nonprofits, we think about everything, and we think about outcomes, and we think about how it impacts our communities. So thinking about and asking about, does the way this tool was built, does the energy infrastructure that it depends on, is the way it's maintained, does that align with who we are as an organization? Where are our lines that we're not willing to cross? And just let that inform you as you build the policy and explore these tools. Remember that the technology serves the mission, not the other way around. So keep asking hard questions, keep bringing this up to your board, keep seeking guidance, keep talking to your leadership. If you are the leadership, keep talking to your staff, and think about these issues as you go forward with AI. As a reminder, we started out with the introduction talking about what AI is for nonprofits. Last week, we talked about some classes, some ways to get smarter, faster, some resources. I'm going to include some resources on these issues in the show notes, so you can find those wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please give us some questions. We're going to do some Q&A in some future podcasts. You can reach out to us on Reddit. We're at Reddit r/nonprofit IT management. We have a dedicated thread in that Reddit around nonprofit AI, so you can ask your questions there, and we have our experts get back to them. Of course, the community can answer them too. And I'll be sharing some of these resources there as well. But please get your questions into us. You can contact us on our website, communityit.com, with questions for the Nonprofit AI podcast. And hope you have a great, productive week. Hope you can explore a new tool, maybe think about a new ethical issue, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.